This is the CreaseCast.
All right, everybody, welcome. It's me, your boy, Sea Dog, Cody Sievertson, the severed son, back at it again in his white Vans. Actually, I don't own Vans, but I could if I really wanted to.
This is a very YouTuber intro, and I respect
it is. Make sure to mash that like button, ding that bell.
Yeah, hit that bell, fam. Hit that squad.
Is that okay? Episode 151. My God, we were doing 151 on the weekend, so that's why I'm sounding a little rough and a little haggard. Shout out to a listener, my boy, the man who's getting married, not next weekend, but the weekend following. We celebrated his bachelor party this past weekend, and things got very rowdy. I thought I ran into a hockey player downtown, like someone from the Abbotsford Canucks or whatever, and I got everybody really hyped up. And then like an hour later, I was like, or on the way home, I was like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. They're in Stockton right now. And I was like, oh my God, I must be so fucked up right now.
Wait, okay. Time out. Who did you think you saw? Like,
I thought I saw Chase Waters of the Abbotsford Canucks because we were. So what happened was we drove to the Orpheum Theater and then we walked to the Brew Hall on Main Street, and it was like fine. And then it started downpouring as we were over the bridge and started like thundering and lightning and shit. So it was like it was kind of spooky. But
you went to Brew Hall. Yeah. You know what? I did see that. I
got some fried pickles and burnt my mouth, which is great.
I think I did the exact same thing the last time I went there too.
It's like drinking acid. But anyway, I saw this guy walking in the opposite direction of me, and I was like, he looked exactly like him. If it's his brother or something, like I wouldn't be shocked. But anyway, he's walking by me and he gave me that look. Like, you know, when you look at someone, you're like, I know you from somewhere. Mm-hmm. Like it was like you stare at someone for like probably longer than you should. And he did that to me. And so we kept on going.
Waters before.
Faber and I both had talked to him post game, one of these games, like, I don't know, like couple Fridays ago or whatever it was. Okay. And so in my head, after having, you know, the intoxicating materials that I had ingested and drank beforehand, I figured that must be someone I had just interviewed for the Abbotsford Canucks. And I was telling them all like, oh, we just walked by a player. I've interviewed that guy.
Yeah.
And they're like, who is it? I'm like, you guys don't know. It doesn't matter.
You're being like Mr. Big Time in front of Mr. Big Shot in front of your friends.
Them, yeah. I was like, I don't want to talk about my writing life with you guys.
I don't want to talk about my career.
I didn't. It would have been like really uncouth and very rude of me. So I was like, I'm not going to do that. But anyway,
you basically told.
Long story short. Shout out to our listener who's always listening to our stuff as he's driving out to Abbotsford as well, actually. And congrats, man. That was a party. But now you get to listen to me after listening to me probably speak a bunch of nonsense for 8 hours on Saturday night to Sunday morning. You now get to listen to me talk about the Vancouver Canucks and the couple games that they played since I was last on the program. And that includes a very unenthusiastic 3-2 loss to the Nashville Predators, and then a victory over the god-awful Dallas Stars. So we got a bit of the best of both worlds here. A bit of a Hannah Montana situation. Got a couple of Hannah Montanimals.
You know that reference. I thought that might be a little heavy.
I'm not that old. I understand Hannah Montana or Hannah Montana. You know?
I was thinking about that today, like not Hannah Montana, but like Disney Channel references. I was thinking like because
you make one of the things that and most of the time I'm like sure.
No, it was one of those things where today, not to like really turn this into a podcast, where I just go completely on a different tangent right as we're about to start going. Today I got an email like in my inbox basically, but it was addressed for Cody because I guess what they would do, I guess some like sometimes you get like those I guess they're technically spam emails where, like these companies that you've never heard of.
We're recruiters and we like your brand. Please.
Yeah, exactly.
Connect with us, right?
And it's usually like some sort of like, it was a media thing. So they knew enough about like what the website was to know that it was a hockey news site, but also not enough to know that the CreaseCast is not like CreaseCast.ca is not, and Lachlan at lochinthecrease.com, my work email is not Cody's.
That's actually, that's a bold guess there.
It was interesting, but to be fair, if you go to the CreaseCast and you go to my webpage, which it's connected to, that's the only email that's available. So that's the only email you can get a hold of, because there's the contact us button at the bottom. And so, and I DM'd Cody today. I sent him like a screenshot of it. I'm like, oh, we're officially considered a duo now because I'm getting sent your mail.
I'm forwarding my mail to you. Yeah.
And I was thinking like the joke of like, oh, like there's Halford and Bruff, there's Arndt and Bowman, there's there's Donnie and Dahlin.
Chris and
Faber and Quads. Wait. Yeah, Faber and Quads.
I said Faber and Chris. That doesn't make sense.
Wow.
Faber and Quads.
Wow. Way to disrespect my boss. But Faber and Quads. And then there's Lach and Cody. And I was or like Sievertson and Irvin. I was thinking like, oh, would he get a reference of like Sweet Life of Lach and Cody? Would that reference fly over his head if I made it?
I never watched it.
That's
I'm aware it exists.
Yeah, so you're aware of it. I was thinking that I was like, oh, I don't know if he'd get that reference for sure, because that was definitely not a show during like his childhood for sure. Like that was definitely ahead, like came a little later.
Like Homer Simpson, I get jokes. Okay,
you get jokes. Yeah.
I get jokes. But let's get into our first joke of the podcast, which was the Canucks losing 3-2 to the Nashville Predators on Friday night. Now, I was covering the Abbotsford Canucks game, which was equally as pathetic. I had the Nashville game set up in our little computer central station here in not the Crease cave, but the Crease cave adjacent. Couple miles away. But anyway, I had the Canucks screen on my left, and I had the Abbotsford Canucks game on my other screen, and then I was recapping the whole time. And every time I looked over at the Canucks game, it just looked like nothing was happening. It just looked like they had nothing to offer, and which is bad, because I think we've talked about this before when we were doing our season predictions. Like, Nashville is not good. Like, they're really not good at all. They have UC Saros, who's really cemented himself as a number one goalie, but
yes, he looked great.
The Preds made like a bunch of moves in the offseason that kind of really didn't do anything for their team direction. Like, it wasn't quite a rebuild. It wasn't quite a rebuild on the fly, and it wasn't like a tear down. Like, it was just like a bunch of random stuff to get rid of money, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, it was a very weird offseason for Nashville. They're doing okay. Yeah, but like they're not the Titan they were at one point, right?
No, like Nashville's like, this entire homestand really has been the Canucks facing teams that they should have been taking points off of. Like, this was the first stretch where they really like that road trip. They should have came away with way more points. Like, Detroit and Buffalo losing points to them is like, they're probably going to look back at that road trip and be like, oh man, that's such a blown opportunity. And this home trip, they just had a really exciting game against Dallas in which they won, which we'll get into, but it doesn't make up for just how crappy this homestand has been. Like, they beat New York, who again isn't great. They're in this awkward phase of where they're trying to establish themselves under this new identity, under their new GM and their new president. But they're still like in an awkward phase. Nashville's in an awkward phase. The Canucks, by their own standards, are supposed to be going for playoffs. Like, by their own standards, they should be better than all of these teams they've played so far.
Yes.
And they are struggling. Thomas Drance pointed out on the Vancast or the Canucks Hour, whatever it was this morning. He's done so much content that I can't even keep up with where he's putting out his opinions anymore.
Yeah,
but he's pointing out...
He's everywhere.
I know, it's insane. He pointed out that the Canucks are getting something like a 9.46 or a 9.52 save percentage at 5v5 with Thatcher, Demko, and net. And they're still losing 1-goal games.
Yep.
Like,
it has been a travesty. Like I'm literally like I posted the video after the the clip after the Nashville game. I don't know if you saw it. But as they're get like the horn sounds, they've lost, the game's over. And I actually didn't notice all of it immediately. But all I notice, I look over, I see the players leaving the ice, and then I see them cut to like the shot under in the hallway leading out that leads out to the bench, or that leads back to the locker room, and you just see Demko just slam his shoulder into the door, like
in
on
his stick too, right?
In his stick, and I didn't notice it until after I clipped it, but he did it twice. He actually did it once down the hall, and then a second time into the door. The door is the second one. And I was like, just like, geez, like how frustrating must it be? Like, I mean, I know it, you know, like maybe not from personal experience, but just that when you're having a great game, you have an insanely good hockey game, you play the best you possibly can, more or less.
Yeah.
And you can't, and you get no run support, and you lose. It's so hard. Like those are the most frustrating games as a goaltender. It's not the games where you suck, because those games you're like, this was a one-off. I
just played like shit.
It's my own. I have control over it, and I didn't play my best. What? Oh well, like that happens. It definitely hurts. Like it's definitely not great for your confidence in yourself. But like you can
chalk it up. You can chalk it up to being like, oh, I just had a bad performance, but like this isn't who I usually am. I'll make sure I'm better next time. But when it's like you're standing on your head every single game, and your lotto line has like 1 point at 5v5 between the three of them, and the coach is juggling every single line after the first period, or sometimes like midway through the first, I think he started shifting up the lines against I think Nashville and New York. He did the same thing twice, because it was just like nothing was working with the Pettersson line.
Nothing was clicking.
And even at the Dallas Stars game, like I know the line shuffling came out too. And a lot of people are going to be like, oh, Pettersson might have got his game back together. And it's like, from what I saw, like he didn't really look that great. Like, they got some power play points, but
we can get
that awesome. But sticking with the Nashville game first, because we need to do our Infinity Blocker pick.
Oh yeah, Infinity Blocker for the Nashville game. Okay, let's do that one. Let's get that done. That's very easy.
Let's cue it up. We got the blocker. I think you know who at least one of us is gonna pick. Lachlan, my man, who deserved the blocker for that Nashville game?
Oh, geez, there were so many people that you could chalk it up to. I mean, okay, to be fair, Höglander looked decent, but he honestly looks decent every game. Brock Besser scored a pretty filthy goal. Like they scored the same goal.
They scored the same goal on opposite sides. It's amazing.
And which made me all the more frustrated when I'm like, why isn't every player just doing this? It clearly works every time. Like you just drag Saros out into no man's land and then dig around him and put it in. But yeah, it's clearly Demko. Like it was from that game, it was Demko for sure. Yeah. I mean, he was the only player that showed up. I will say that the one thing I hated about the clip that I posted on Twitter was how many people were kind of using that as a springboard to be like, oh, there's no emotion from Bo Horvat. Like I saw that and I was like, I literally saw him smashing his stick during the third period. He was one of the few players that really looked
he was raging on the bench
and giving a crap, right?
Yeah.
And so to see people do that, and like some people spin this into Pettersson is lazy, blah, 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 like all of those takes, which I guess I should expect at this point. But like, I'm still disappointed in people when I see it. Because it's like, that's not fair. Like, that's not fair to say. Like, they're not playing well, but it's not fair to
you can't generalize that, like, just because they don't break a stick on the bench or get caught like screaming fuck raging, like JT Miller or whatever, like doesn't mean their give a shit meter isn't high. Like for all they know, in the in the second intermission or the first intermission, like Bo Horvat could have been in the locker room being like, guys, wake the fuck up, like we're trying to win a game here. Like you don't know.
Yeah, you know what you see on the bench, and also every player is so different that it's like, every player adapts or takes on like criticism or hard times differently. Like some players are like JT Miller and they're audible and loud. And they're audible and loud when they're having a hard time. Some players are different. Some players maybe not bottle it up, but they don't let it out until, maybe they're, in the locker room, or it's in their own ways. Like everybody has their own ways of coping with hard times. And, you can't judge a player based on what you're seeing just in the short clips you get of the bench during a broadcast of deciding he's lazy now. He's lazy now based on this entirely. This is what I'm basing it off of. And especially in Pettersson's case, where it's been just a lot of like bad luck, and you're seeing a guy who's playing with not as much confidence as you're used to seeing from him. But yeah, Demko was the best in that game. Like Demko was the one who absolutely played like 100, like he was there the full 60. He played a very, very good hockey game. And yeah, we'll get into the Dallas game, and one of the nice things about the Dallas game, once you put out your gauntlet pick, was that it was the first time the Canucks won a game, not because Demko was necessarily bailing them out the entire night. And it took long enough for them to win that way. But yeah, for the Nashville game, at least Demko was the star.
Yeah, I agree. No, like I love the Besser and the Hoglander goals, like the exact same move being pulled twice on opposite sides of the ice. That's great. And like the team did control shots like really well at like evens. Like it's just like their penalty kill is just so bad.
Yeah, we're gonna talk plenty about the penalty kill, I think, today.
Yeah, like it's not working. It's at the point where a lot of people were like kind of up in arms about like get Garland on power play 1, get Podkolzin on power play 2, and it's like that stuff like you don't really need to worry about because you're on a man advantage. Like eventually, it's just bound to work out, and the bounces are gonna start going your way. But the penalty kill, it's like they've tried all the guys that are supposed to be good at penalty killing, and Tyler Mott isn't in the lineup, but it doesn't really seem like it would make a difference because it's just that out of sorts. Like they can't stop anything. It's like there was like a great tweet I saw on I want to say it was either the Nashville game or the Dallas game, but it was basically like the Canucks need to just like give up a goal in the first 5 seconds of the penalty or the power play so that they can return to 5v5 where they're dominating.
Oh,
and it's like
that's so funny.
It's like it's sad because it's like, man, like that actually makes sense because why waste the team's time on a losing cause when you can just like give up, you can concede the goal and then go back to where you've been theoretically really strong. You just haven't had the bounces go your way yet.
Yeah, the logical part of your head says that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But then there's also a small negative there that's like, well, let's hear this out. Let's hear this idea out. It's basically like it's literally the football player giving up the rouge in the touchdown zone so they can start at the 20. Like that's literally what that is.
It's not. It's not the worst idea. It's pretty bad, but it's bad that it's at this point where it's actually conceivable to be a possible solution to how bad the PK is going.
It's bad that there is probably 1% of everybody's brains where they're like, where they're they're actually thinking about it.
I bring up this GIF every single time I think when I'm on this podcast, but it's that GIF of the white lady who's like, she's like shakes her head like no, and then she does the thinking about it like, oh well.
Kombucha girl. Yeah, kombucha girl.
Okay, is that what it's called? So whenever I try to search for it, I never know what to type.
It's kombucha girl because that's her reaction from like a TikTok of her tasting kombucha for the first time and being like, maybe no. Well,
all right, that makes a lot of sense then. Okay,
yeah, it's very funny.
That's kind of where we're at as Canucks fans watching this team, where it's like, okay, it's time to start throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks on the special teams, because at this point, you can't even like I like that Justin Bailey's up with the team, and it's weird to me that he is put in this weird limited 5v5 role, but like PK specialist, like first out PK specialist role, when it's like he penalty killed in the AHL in 2019 and 2020, and he did it in his brief look with the Abbotsford Canucks this year as well. But I would have never been like, he's known to be a good penalty killer. Like, his numbers were never that great by my tracking standards. It was just like, he just could do it. So it's weird that he's suddenly being kind of pigeonholed into this role that he might not be best suited to do.
Which is interesting because he's actually looked really good. I've actually taken like my takeaway from his few games that he's been up personally, and maybe this is just me looking at it through, again, the small sample size. But I was actually like, oh, he actually kind of fits the description of what they should be looking for in a penalty killer, instead of like the stagnant guys sitting out there and just kind of being pylons and hoping you can basically do like the soccer thing of like the wall around the net kind of thing.
Everyone lies down and stops the pass, and that hopes for the best.
Exactly. Like Justin Bailey was actually out there kind of like tracking down the puck carrier, kind of trying to chase a little bit, trying to force like a quick pass or a bad pass or a panicked shot as much as he could.
Yeah.
And it was working kind of okay. Like, it was okay. Like, not great.
I think as like a first out, like first shift penalty killer, I think him and Miller look pretty good because they have the energy for the first round, and usually it results in them doing some good clearances. Bailey's got the speed, so he can get the puck out pretty well if he does actually, like, pick off the pass or whatever it is. But he plays very reserved while he's in the NHL. Like, in the AHL, if he picked off a pass, that guy is going end to end and he's trying a breakaway. But like in the NHL level, he every single time he breaks it to center and then he dumps it and changes. Like, he's very cognizant that he can't try what he would try in the AHL level.
Right. He knows what his role is, but maybe that role is holding him back a little bit.
But at this point, because the team thinks of Bailey as a first out penalty killer, and he's just been fine. Like, fine is good, but it's like, you don't want that to be your fine. Shouldn't be your first out player. It should be someone who's like, this guy's elite at killing penalties. Jason Dickinson hasn't been that guy. Tyler Mott's not in the lineup. And then after that, it's like a bunch of guys who just don't really fit the role that well, or they haven't looked well so far. And so at this point, when it comes to throwing shit at the wall and hope it sticks, like, why aren't they just trying Niels Hoglander? Why aren't they just trying Podkolzin and just seeing what'll happen? Because when you're operating the league's worst penalty kill, you have nothing to lose by trying out the kids in this position. Throw Pettersson out there. Like, who gives a shit? You have nothing to lose because it's so bad. The worst thing that can happen is you give up a power play goal with Pettersson and Brock Besser killing penalties. Like, it doesn't matter if it's them or if it's Bailey and Juho Lammikko, because you're going to give it up anyway. So might as well try random shit in the early goings of the season against awful opponents, and you fine tune as the season goes on. So
you look at like Connor Garland, for example, as a guy who would be a kind of a good, not only would he be a good fit on a penalty kill, potentially, at least in a pinch, but he's also a guy that could potentially, like, say, cut you back to 4-on-4, because he's very good at drawing penalties and he's very good at like maintaining control of the puck. He's been a very, very good pickup for this team. And also in all zones, which is frankly like been a hard thing for this management team to do. So for him to actually show up and be good at every spot on the ice, like, why not try him at shorthanded? Like, he's fine with going down and blocking shots. As he showed in the preseason.
You might as well, man, right? Like, they have nothing to lose by trying the weird combinations, and like, I'm all for it. Like, they're not scared to put Podkolzin on power play too, right? They're not scared of completely and dramatically changing up their special teams units. Like, so,
I will say that even that took a long time. Like, that was brand new.
But even that, like, for the power play, like I was saying, like, it's eventually, like, a power play is eventually going to work. Like, no team is ever going to run a 0% power play. Like, it's just not fucking possible. Like, you're going to accidentally score goals. But the penalty kill is kind of like, it's just so clearly out of sorts, and like I said, league worst. So at this point, you whatever you're trying isn't working. And so if you started making the moves to switch up your power play units, you should have also considered maybe doing the penalty kill as well. And I guess we'll see that maybe by next game when they play tomorrow night. It's
Anaheim.
Anaheim. Oh, that'll
Anaheim.
be
I have the jersey behind. I got the Wild
he's got the Wild
jersey.
Wing. You might pick up some student rush tickets, wear the Wild Wing, go downtown for another game.
Oh God, that would be just I mean, I would love an excuse to wear that jersey out because it's gorgeous. But I don't know how,
because I don't think anyone's gonna go to that game. It's
Oh,
Anaheim.
well, here's the thing:
terrible.
Anaheim's winning. They've got 5 wins. They're 4 wins in a row. They've won 4 in a row.
Sure, but if you ask the casual fan based on like history,
they're rebuilding.
What do you think of Anaheim? People are gonna be like, "Oh, aren't they dog shit?" And then they won't go to the game, right?
Right.
Tuesday night games are usually really dead too.
Yeah, they're
as well. Like those early midweek games, no one goes to.
Yeah,
and because it's Anaheim, you'll probably be able to get a student rush ticket for $16 behind the glass.
Yeah, maybe something like that. That'd be good. I think you know what? Like, I'll say this, like, personally, I do enjoy, if maybe this is just because I've gotten a taste of like the media life kind of thing in points here.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I will say going to games now, like, and sitting down, I'm like, I feel so weird being like, I'll be like, oh, I wish I had my laptop right now. Like, I'll be like, I wish I could just bust out my.
You feel like
my
you
captures.
Should be taking notes or something. You should be noting what's happening on the ice, but instead you're just like watching and consuming.
Yeah, like I feel so naked without like a notebook and pen now. Yeah, but yeah, like I was at the Dallas game yesterday, which was a good game. Like this is the closest the Canucks have come to. This was, I mean, well, let's put it this way: this was their best game. This was their best game of the year by a country mile. And even then, there was flaws.
And even then, there were so many flaws to it. Like where if you really deconstruct the game, you cannot even really be that happy with the result because it's still a situation where Demko's giving you like 950 plus goaltending, and they're still giving up as many goals as they are. Like Dallas is not a good team. Like I really cannot stress this. Like they are. Oh my goodness.
They have less. The Canucks have more points than them. Just so we're clear here, the Canucks right now have one more point than the Stars do in one more game played, but they're like the Stars are, despite having one less point than the Canucks, are 5th in their division. The Canucks are 7th, which is shocking considering. Again, I think you and I were both under the impression that the Pacific was going to be clearly the worst of the two. Of the worst of the two divisions, and right now the Central's not looking so hot. I think looking at it, San Jose has 13 points. There for that, they actually, you know what, it kind of evens out. The bottom is where the difference is. There's a much more even spread of points in the bottom half of the Pacific than there are in the Central. But yeah, they're not great considering they were a Cup final team a couple years ago.
Yeah, they have one of the lowest goals scored rates in the league right now. It's like them, I think, not Boston, Dallas, Arizona, obviously. Like Arizona.
Right, Arizona's far.
I don't even think they've eclipsed 20 goals scored yet.
You are right. They're so tied with Boston for second last in terms of goals for.
Yeah, and if you go on a per game basis, like they're like bottom of the heap. Like they just do not create anything. So the fact that you're giving up 3 goals against to a team that struggled to produce offense in any state with a goaltender providing Vezina caliber goaltending this season. So let's get right into the most important thing about the Dallas game, which was fucking Thatcher Demko and his diving stick paddle save.
So good.
Like
I had a perfect view of that, and I was just like, "Oh, good lord!" I was like, "What a save!" Like, it was like, okay. Let me break this down for you a little bit, like just my thought process here, because I'm watching the 2-on-1 unfold. I think it's I don't remember exactly who the players were in that case, but I see Tyler Myers is the defenseman back. there's the two Stars forwards are coming down, and I'm seeing Myers at the start of this 2-on-1. Oh, I remember who had the puck initially. It's Radulov. It's Alexander Radulov has the initial puck. And I'm seeing Myers, like, he's sticking more towards that right guy, the guy without the puck. And I'm thinking, okay, he's playing it correctly. If you're the goaltender, you want to face the guy who already has the puck because it doesn't involve having to move and readjust to the play. Mm-hmm. So right now Myers playing. And then I see Myers do the slide in towards Radulov. And I'm like, oh no, because I just see it unfold. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? As he completely somehow, again, manages to not defend either player. He goes from defending probably one of them okay to nobody. Yeah. And poor Thatcher Demko has to bail him out in the craziest way possible.
The most beautiful way imaginable.
So good.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah, overall, he actually had a relatively just okay game by his standards, but that save was incredible. Like, it was so nice.
Yeah, he was on fire that night. Finished his game with a .957 save percentage at 5v5. Like I said, this team without Thatcher Demko playing at his level right now is probably bottom 2 in the league. Like, they are.
Oh god, yeah. Like, they're without the goaltending that they're getting. Like, they are absolutely in the Arizona area of the standings right now, and they're not far off from it right now.
No, like, it's still like early enough in the season that like Arizona can string together 3 wins and they're like back in it, right? Like, it doesn't take much when it's this early in the season, right? But when you're banking on Vezina caliber goaltending to not compete with a team that's intentionally trying to lose for the first overall pick, like, that is so bad and so embarrassing. Like
we keep saying, we're not the ones who thought this was a playoff team going into the year. They're the ones who set that expectation. Yeah, they're the ones who believe that they are playoff capable. And again, I think you and I, if we were looking at it like objectively at the start of the year, would have been like, yeah, they're better, but they're probably still not a playoff team. But we have to go off of what you believe they are as management, as ownership, as a team. They're not a playoff team right now. They're looking like they had a much better game against Dallas. They played much, much better, like much more of the quality that I was expecting. Like a case of a team of, okay, we're going to beat you, not necessarily with great defense. We're going to beat you by absolutely blowing you out on the scoreboard. Yeah, that was kind of what I expected out of them.
Yeah, we're going to beat you with like a power play that's running hot, a penalty kill that's so-so, finesse. And 5v5, we're also going to light it up too. We're going to give up some terrible odd man rushes and probably a lot of goals as well, but we'll still beat you on the aggregate, which is completely emblematic of like a 500 team that'll eventually
firehouse hockey.
Yeah, like they might scrape into the final playoff wildcard spot or whatever. They might miss by a couple points. Like, that's just the type of style that they play. But when their power play's clicking and their PK, I think what they do 1 for 3 or something, or 2 for 3 and shutting it down.
They went. Oh, the PK.
Yeah, PK was like 1 for 3 or something.
2 of the Stars' 3 goals were on the power play still. So that power play the penalty kill was a mess. Is still a mess.
Yeah.
I believe even like Jason Dickinson had a quote after he's like, I actually lost sleep on Friday because I was like so just like so worried with like the PK right now, which is not like I'll say Jason Dickinson has really been struggling in my opinion. Like, he has not looked as good as I was expecting out of him in the early going. He's probably been, I would say, probably one of the most disappointing players out of the group so far.
Which kind of brings it back to what you were saying with the team expectations, right? Because, like, to anyone listening to this, we're not critiquing them like maniacs thinking that the team should be and ought to be a playoff caliber team. Like, you and I are pretty bullish on what this team is capable of just because we don't trust the defense. But the team itself basically came out ahead of time. The owner, the GM, the coach, we're all just like, yeah, we're going to win with this group. We're going to get the playoffs. The playoffs are the goal. we won't accept anything else. Like winning is the key here. Like, so by their own standards, like they are already falling short with a less than 500 win percentage. Like it's bad. Like,
yeah.
So we don't like, we're not crazy. We just want to clarify.
I think
insane.
our listeners know well enough that we're not crazy. We're crazy, but in a different way.
We may pitch stupid ideas like getting scored on in the first 2 seconds of a penalty kill, so you don't have to worry about it. We may pitch Tyler Myers as a forward.
Hell yeah.
We got terrible ideas, but we're not crazy. We understand the actual expectations of this team. We are just evaluating the team based on how the actual GM, owner, and coach view this team.
Yes.
Which, I mean, God bless them for their ambition. It's like the dress for the job you want thing. They dressed their team with a forward group that, should be a playoff contender, but unfortunately, the bill of goods sold on Jason Dickinson was he's going to be a really great two-way shutdown defensive center for the third line. And he hasn't really been that.
No.
Nothing really happens with him on the ice, but I will say he looked a lot better against Dallas, a team that's terrible.
It was, you know what? Like at this point, we'll take it, right? Like I think we have to take it at this point, because here's the thing, right? Like the biggest thing I think for the Canucks, and I was writing about this today, was how the Canucks are in a spot, particularly with the forward group, where there's clearly been like a lot of like people like struggling in terms of like how they feel about their own play, and like Pettersson not playing at his most confident. Like that's the word I'm looking for here. The confidence has been non-existent for a lot of players in the forward group, and as soon as they find that confidence again, they could be a lot better. Not great, not a great team overall, but a lot better.
A little better.
Yeah.
One of those players.
Better.
One of the players that whose confidence actually is rising as the season progresses, like unlike most of the players on the team, is Vasily Podkolzin, who, as I joked about in my tweet when we were asking for questions from our listeners, after that Podkolzin goal and they got the 2-goal lead, I was like, there's no way Dallas is coming back. Like their offense just sucks. So I'm going to go watch a movie instead. So that's what I did. I had the game off in the corner. Kept checking back, and it would turn into 6-3. And I was like, yeah, it's fine. Good.
Yep, they're fine.
Don't have to worry about it.
Olsen technically ended up with the game winner.
He sure did. Which is great. Good for him.
Great.
I've loved his game, like progression so far. Like obviously, like in the early goings, I had like the worry that like maybe 10 minutes or 8 minutes a night in the NHL wasn't going to work, especially if the coach doesn't trust him. But every game, he's given him reasons to trust him. And I think he's gotten more 5v5 goals than Pettersson or Besser combined. Like,
it wouldn't be.
He's value right now.
Yeah, because he hasn't played any power play time in theory. He technically did get 36 seconds on the power play in this last game, which was like the entire second unit only got 36 seconds as a group.
Yeah.
But but that's something. Like that's something that he wasn't getting initially. I wrote an article for Canucks Army last week after the Nashville game talking about how I honestly was watching Podkolzin play, and particularly the stuff that he was doing, not in terms of necessarily putting the puck in the net, but in terms of the way that he was actually approaching like puck control and actually ending scoring chances for the other team, and like his defense, his work at both ends of the ice in terms of being able to work the puck back onto either his stick or a teammate's. I was like, I think better. Travis Green, I firmly believe that Travis Green needs to trust this guy more, needs to trust him with more responsibilities, because he's clearly ready. And especially considering that, like, I think for some people, like, you've seen Höglander, you've seen Pettersson come through the system in terms of, and Quinn Hughes, of course, is like guys where it's like, oh, they're having this incredible rookie season. This everything is highlight reel. It's awesome. So I really wanted to highlight Podkolzin as a guy where it's like, hey, he's not necessarily making highlight reel plays every single night, but he's actually doing very, very well defensively, and he deserves a shot with more time. He's
unironically doing all the little things.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, literally like, hey, look, your power play is not doing well. Like, this is you should, not only should you be giving him like chances to play more ice time and trusting him with more responsibilities in your own end, at the other end, what have you, you should also give him a chance on the second power play unit and actually let them go out there and try and figure something out.
Yeah.
And sure enough, Chason was in the press box for that game, which to the celebration, I think of God, everybody. Because oh my God, that power play looks so much better. Like straight up, the power play looked 1,000. And let's
it looked like a different team.
Yeah, let's be clear here. I don't think that's necessarily indicative simply because of the fact that they put Chason in the press box. I don't think that's actually accurate.
Right.
But I look at I saw a completely night and day change between the power play units, and by having Besser actually on PP1 with the main group again, doing something a little bit different where instead of having him in the Ovechkin spot, they actually had him down low with Horvat kind of working around and transitioning there and putting Miller up near the top instead. That worked out really, really well. And suddenly they were actually moving the puck around. They were playing with a little bit more, like there was much more of a fluid power play going, which is exactly what you want to see from that group instead of the whole, we're going to sit still, pass around way too much, and then maybe get one shot and hope we get one shot that doesn't get blocked.
From the
perimeter. They were actually regularly getting shots through and trying something, and it was working out really, really well. And to kind of bring it back to Podkolzin, like they got the one opportunity with Garland where Horvat got the puck up to Garland. Garland makes a perfect no-look pass. It's gorgeous pass.
Yeah.
And Podkolzin, I loved it so much where I just see, like, I literally from my seat, I see Podkolzin take the shot, and it's such a hard shot, like that just rifles past Anton Khudobin. It knocks him off his own feet, and I love that. Like I love that whole like, oh my God, he wanted to score so badly, he just like completely threw his whole body out of rotation. It was very funny, but like, the attitude around him, like I love that.
Yeah, that his line with Garland was like firing really well. They look pretty good together. But Niels Hoglander, Horvat, and Pearson, like they look to have started to develop some serious chemistry, and also were controlling play like quite well.
Yes.
That like again, like the whole, you can be happy about a lot of the things that happened in the Dallas game, but there's a lot of things that you should worry about. One of them being the Lotto line played like 10 minutes together, and they gave up more scoring chances against than they generated for themselves. And that was while like out attempting their opposition at the time. So a little worrisome, but in games like this, like that's when you're like, oh, thank God that, Garland and Podkolzin put stuff together. Thank God Pearson, Horvat, and Hoglander, like they got something going too, because you need those guys to show up when the Lotto line is working, which it still has not worked.
Yeah, I am. Well, and this is where I guess we can get in. I think you can also get a little bit into the power play as well. Like I was like, so the first period I don't think there was a single penalty called. I don't think
no, it was really quick.
Sorry. There was the one. Sorry, there was the one on the Canucks specifically that ended up in the net, and that was the first goal of the game. But like the Canucks didn't get a single call. Which, if you go and look at like the stats, I believe Jay Fresh had the
penalties drawn.
The Canucks are actually drawing more penalties than any other team in the NHL, which is wild considering what we've seen from them. But it also
disappointing.
Yeah, but again, I really do think, especially like we've mentioned a bunch of times before, that with Pettersson in particular, with guys like Miller and Besser, it's one of those cases where once they figure it out, once they get the monkey off their back a little bit, the floodgates are kind of going to open there. I think the power play was that. Like the second period power play could potentially have been that, because I was watching them make plays that they were not trying before, and it was working, and they were looking a lot more confident as they got going. Like Miller taking that shot from the circles. Like I don't think he did that much. He hasn't done that much during the last stretch of games. Like most of the time, if he gets the puck in that area, he's trying that back pass to the defenseman, to Hughes, or to Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Instead, he actually took the shot himself, and it went right in. All right, that's your first goal. That's the tie. Then you get Pettersson out there. Again, Pettersson has not been shooting. There was the one, and in the first period, he was looking particularly rough, where I was watching him just bobble passes and pucks, and I was like, geez, he is really just gripping the stick a little too tight, huh? And then in the power play, that second power play unit, you see him take the first shot. It goes over the net, but again, he had not even been attempting that shot for a long time. And I'm like, okay, he's gonna get his shot here. Give him a second. And then you see the lane, like literally from my view, and you kind of see the C's part a little bit, just a bit. It's just a bit because there's that whole group of players in front of the net. Besser and Horvat, I think, are both screening Khudobin at that time. There's multiple stars in the lane, but you just see that little bit of room that open up. And as a goalie, I'm watching it basically from kind of almost like center to like the nets, essentially, like pretty close to dead center. And the goalie part of me, like literally, it's such an instinct of me. I just go shoot. Like I'm not a shoot guy at games, generally speaking.
Yeah.
But as a goaltender, I will yell shoot to my teammates if I can see the lane from my end.
Yeah.
And sure enough, right at that time, he takes the shot and it's a perfect shot in the net because he got that room and it goes in. And I'm like, okay. And it's kind of like I exhaled basically on that where I was like, okay, I think he's going to figure it out here now because it was going to take the one goal to get it done. And then you can start to chip away at 5-on-5. And there are a lot of guys I think you can chalk that up to. Like Besser is another one that I think looked a lot more confident. I think Horvat was looking a lot better. And that started to spill over into even strength where you see Horvat going and jamming at the front of the net and getting the puck in front and scoring. JT Miller ended up with 2 goals on the night. Ends up with him and Horvat are tied for most goals on the team right now with 5 each. Yeah. And then you have Besser taking like shots at the cracks at the empty net from like just an impossible angle, and it working. And they're just like, okay, maybe they're not like at their best yet. Like there's still a ways to go.
Yeah, there's still like some growing pains they need to work through.
Right. But you're seeing them take the kinds of risks that make them special players and the kinds of like maybe like the kinds of like lower percentage plays that they're capable of scoring on that you want to see from them regularly and that they're capable of doing regularly. So I think that in itself at the very least was huge. Like I think that was huge to see from them.
Yeah, and I kind of like wonder now at this point too, like, do you think they run it back with the exact same lineup for Anaheim? Like, do you think this is the building block for them where they're like, okay, some of the things didn't work. Like a lot of lines still didn't work, but we liked what we saw in like the Hoglander, Horvat Pearson line. We saw enough of the Dickinson, Garland, Podkolzin match that like maybe we keep rolling while these 2 lines are firing and we just kind of hope for the best with the other 2 and they pick it up? Or do they still kind of take out the blender and keep trying to refine what they're working with in their lineup so that they try to get each guy going? Or do they just kind of throw it and say, fuck it, we're past waiting, we need to just go with what's working so far and then hope for the best?
Knowing Travis Green and his coaching style, I think they're going to just run it back. Particularly Travis is a big fan of, when you've got the winning lineup, you don't mess with the card. You don't mess with the lineup card.
Yeah.
Even if it's like the ugliest win imaginable. If you get the
that's
2
true.
points,
he would do that.
He would still run it back because in the eyes of a coach, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, there are now that's not to say that they'll be like, that Travis Green will be like, everything was perfect about this game. Everything went exactly according to plan. Like that's not what he's saying when he does that sort of thing. It's just a case of, okay, we saw the building blocks coming together. We saw them kind of clicking into place. If we run this again, can we build up more? Can you build more? And can you start building in that confidence back, particularly for groups like the Lotto line that haven't been playing as particularly well, but did get they got what, 4 goals as a unit, like in total, like maybe not at 5v5, but as 3 guys on the ice during that game, they had 4 goals combined. Like that's not nothing. Even if it was mostly power play goal, if it was 3 power play goals in an empty net, that's still something to build off of in their eyes.
Yeah.
And I think that means that they're going to come in playing a lot more confident and they'll look a lot better. The defense was still very, very much a mess.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those cases where it's like, I feel like, here's the thing. Can I just be honest here? I feel bad for the defense a little bit. Like, particularly, like, Quinn Hughes was very good in that game. Like, Quinn Hughes, but of course, he's Quinn Hughes.
Sure.
Like, you expect that from him. He had 3 assists. He was great. The rest of the group, more or less, I'm like, I feel bad kind of harping on them because because very clearly they're being asked to do a lot more than they should be.
Yeah.
Than a good team would be asking of them. I think Drancer had the tweet very recently talking about like Tucker Poolman, how this is a guy who should be on a regular team, would at the most be playing on a 3rd pairing, and he's being asked to play with Quinn Hughes on a nightly basis.
Yeah.
And that's a lot to ask, and I do definitely understand that from him. I think Daniel Wagner had an article recently about how OEL and Tyler Myers are actually kind of doing okay as a shutdown pairing. Like, actually, if you look at Oliver Ekman-Larsson's underlying defensive numbers outside of the penalty kill, he's actually doing pretty well. He's actually improving on the numbers that a lot of people were expecting of him, and it looks like it's sustainable.
Yeah.
But the problem comes in when you see some people being like, "Oh, we told you they'd be good," kind of thing, right? Like doing the whole like trying to like, I guess, trying to plan the parade, so to speak, with those guys. It's one of those cases where it's like, okay, look, they're not doing badly per se. They're not being awful, but considering how much they're here for, like what kind of term they're at, like that sort of thing, it's not enough for it's not based on what they're being paid and what they're being asked to do. It's not enough, but individually they're doing okay. Like they're doing as best I think as you can hope for with them.
I would like to counter and say Tucker Poolman sucks. He's a waste of money. He's not. He's fine.
Rough, man.
He's genuinely
back.
Travis Hamonic is no better as far as I'm concerned. He's
a
guy.
I will say I will say at least on the ice objectively he's I would say objectively he's better.
Well, he knows how to handle the puck.
Better than Pullman. Sorry.
Yeah.
He can do a lot. Travis Hamonic does a lot more when he's on the ice than Tucker Poolman does.
He can actually like string a pass and take a pass and shoot the puck. Like honestly, it's when I'm clipping these like Canucks games on Twitter when I actually have the time, like I was always blown away at some of the gaffes that this guy would have with the puck on the blue line where he just like,
we're talking Pullman.
Okay. Yeah. Like it's downright shocking that he got paid as much as he did. And I know that the right shot defenseman market was like really rough this year because there was so many available and a lot of teams were trying to bolster their depth as much as possible. So the Canucks signed like every single one of them that they could, but he is not a $2.5 million defenseman. Like he's just not. And the fact that there's still 3 more years at his age, like it's not going to get any better. He's not just going to suddenly figure out how to like string together a pass or get a shot on net. Like I clipped the time on ice after the first period last night, and he was the low man on the totem pole of all defensemen. And it's like he's the 28-year-old who's been in the league for 3 or 4 years now. Maybe not like a full 82 game season yet, but he has infinitely more experience than Kyle Burrows. And the fact that after like one whole period, the team viewed that Poolman's his on ice contributions were only worth something like a minute more of ice time than Kyle Burrows, who's played 7 games last season and whatever it is now with the Canucks. Like he's a rookie, just like Jack Rathbone was a rookie too. Like Neither had experience, and the fact that Pullman's like losing ice time to that guy is such a huge woof as far as I'm concerned.
It is a little bit. Again, Tucker Pullman, if he was your 7th defenseman, you wouldn't
on
love
a good
it,
team,
be
he'd be a
with it.
great 7th defenseman where you're like, great, he can come in and do absolutely nothing and just chew time down.
He just has to be a body today. Like, we just need a body, and he's good enough that it fits that bill and that description. The problem is the Canucks are so depleted on their blue line that they're using him like he's a top 4 defenseman, which he's certainly not.
He's clearly not. And I saw this in your notes. I didn't even see this from Rick Dollywall, but Luke Shen apparently has a knee injury. Not Luke Shen is like the solution, but
I would say that Pullman's been better than Shen, at least in the.
Oh, of course, I agree. Burrows has been better than Shen as far as I'm concerned. But when your right shot depth loses Shen, suddenly it's like they have Brad Hunt who can play on his offside, and then after him it's Madison Bowie. And we complained about this. We pointed this out in like one of our last episodes, maybe not last one, but the one before, where it was just like, you get 2 injuries to Hamonic or whatever, and there's just like nothing left.
Suddenly you're you remember the game where Quinn Hughes was out against Buffalo. Holy God.
That was rough.
It would now say that happened again, God forbid, like knock on wood. They would at least have Hamonic now to kind of stem the tide slightly, a little bit, but I don't think it's much better. Like, I don't think it moves the needle, but it doesn't move the needle that much. There's still clearly it's clearly Quinn Hughes and his merry men kind of thing right now, because they just do not have the horses on the blue line to keep up. And again, you saw the results of what happened. The second they lost Hughes for even a single game, it all fell apart so quickly. It fell apart like nobody's business, and you can't have that.
And in regards to Daniel Wagner's article on Myers and OEL actually playing okay, like that's the big caveat, right? Is Quinn Hughes is playing like Quinn Hughes. He just hasn't had the puck luck and hasn't really been producing that well so far. But OEL and Myers are playing like, I don't want to say above their contract value, because there's no way
that's
Myers
incorrect.
Is $6 million
that would be no way
contract, and OEL's not a 7 point whatever defenseman, right? But they're playing well enough that you're like, okay, I can appreciate how many minutes they're chewing and how effective OEL's been in his first year as a Canuck. And Myers has elevated his game to where he's not completely a liability on every shift. Like, he's a bit better this season. Like, it hasn't been like last year where it was just like you didn't want him at the ice or on the ice at all.
Yeah.
But with Hughes at his best, which he isn't at yet, but with OEL and Myers playing above average, this team defensively is still atrocious. Which is scary, because if either OEL or Myers regress and start not playing to their ability, or not playing to how they've been playing so far, it's going to get a lot worse for Thatcher Demko and what he's going to have to do to buoy this team towards the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the best way to put it is that it's, again, if money wasn't an object, like if we were talking about, let's say money was there was no cap, like salary cap, and however much you paid a guy, the only thing that mattered was is that the owner had to pay it. If you're looking at Myers and OEL in that particular case, they're doing okay. Like, they're doing better than I think either of us. I think a lot of people expected. And that's good. That's very, very good. And again, another case of where let's say the Canucks were stronger defensively, if they were your third pairing, suddenly you're like, oh, this is a great team. Like, oh my God, this is a bona fide playoff team. If they're your third pairing in front with a more improved defensive core in front of them, suddenly you're very comfortable with the team that you see in front of you. Yeah. The problem becomes is literally, again, it comes down to money. Like, we've actually we've seen this a lot recently with guys like Mitch Marner in Toronto, where it's like guys where once you start getting paid a certain amount of money and start taking up a certain amount of the salary cap, just okay isn't good enough anymore. You have to be like, for the amount that OEL and Myers are each making, they should be they should be top 20 defensemen in the NHL. Like they should be in that they should be among the 30 best defensemen in the NHL because they're getting paid that much. And that's unrealistic. That's unrealistic of us to expect. That's not fair to them that's not really fair to them to put that kind of pressure on them to be that good. The problem is the fact that because of how much money they command and compared to the rest of the NHL market, and arguably more importantly, how much money they are taking up that could potentially be used on other players.
Yeah.
You just okay is not good enough for what you're paying them. They should be your best players more or less every single night they're on the ice, and they're clearly not.
The best takeaway that we can have from this depressing conversation that I feel like we have every single episode.
It turned into very depressing really quick. They won. They won the game.
They won. That's the problem.
They won a damn game.
We want to be happy, but it's like
6 goals.
I know
they scored 6 goals, and we're talking about it like it's a funeral. Why are we like this?
It's like someone presents you like a really beautiful cake, and then you open up the cake, and it's like, oh, I accidentally used salt instead of sugar. And so it's just a very good inedible, way of putting it. It looks great and you appreciate it, but you can't do anything with it because
you're like fully allergic, or it's like made of something you're fully allergic to. Like it's like, oh, is this a oh man, I'm allergic to like peanuts. Is this a peanut? But you made me a peanut butter and chocolate cake. Thanks, guys. Like it's so close. Like it looks great. But don't dig in, you might die.
Yeah, no shit. But anyways, folks, the big good news is we'll get into the NHL stuff. I just want to quickly sum up and say, just Pat, like don't worry so much. Like it's still early in the season, and on the bright side, the Canucks are paying a lot for Myers and OEL, but at least it's not Seth Jones. And that's all we can say about that.
That is true. They are doing that.
They're not sitting back waiting for a $9.5 million extension to kick in starting next year.
Oh, that is true. And
it couldn't have happened to a nicer organization.
That is very true. Yeah. Like you said, and I wrote about this today, was like the urgency, like there is urgency, like you are in a case where you're already kind of in win now mode already because you've lost some ground. Because of the fact that I think I asked you if you knew where it was. But you didn't know either. There was definitely a stat that has come out before where in a normal year, after November 30th, generally speaking, there is very little to no shuffle between the teams that make the playoffs in terms of like who is in and who's out. Like, yes, they will change who is first and second and third. But more or less, generally, in most cases, that is your 8. That is your 8, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 teams will flip. And that's it. It's almost entirely the same from November all the way to the end of the year because again, like every game matters at this point. They're done. The Canucks are in a spot where they need to be playing urgent hockey, and they need to be playing like, oh my God, our life depends on this game. Our playoff chances depend on this game, even though, again, the playoffs won't start until May. The playoff rush doesn't fully start until like April this year. Yeah. They need to be treating it like they are, and they did against Dallas. And there's enough time that if they go into this next game, a great test of a game, because you're playing Anaheim, who's won 4 in a row, who is currently, I believe, third in the Pacific Division, and then you flip, and then you come into a few games against Colorado, who's of course Colorado. They haven't been playing as well as expected, but they're still the Avalanche. You play Vegas, a team that right now is awful, and that is because of the fact that like all their best players are injured right now. Yeah. All the more reason why you need to win, why you need to beat them right now while you can, because you definitely can, because that room could make a huge difference later on.
Yeah, for sure.
And then like the Ducks again on Sunday, and then the Ducks again Sunday. If you can come out of that with enough wins out of that group, suddenly your season looks the outlook on what you're capable of, what your season could potentially line up as, looks so different. Like, it looks so much better. And it's a case of, can you build off of this game? Can you underline the things you did really well and build off of them and turn that into the team that you believe that you are? Because I think that's there. I think you and I would agree that the pieces are there. You can see the makings potentially of a better team out of this last game.
Yeah, that win was definitely more in line with what I would have expected this team to win by in this season. Like, it was going to be like kind of
this is what we
fire
expected
sale
night
hockey,
one.
you know? Yeah, like this. If they're going to win, it's going to be like this: high scoring, terrible penalty killing. Just who gives a shit? But they.
I mean,
I
expected a slightly better penalty kill than this. Not this awful.
Oh, I expected it to be terrible. I had no faith in it at all to start the season.
It's not. It's not great. But it's something. It's something. Infinity Gauntlet from this game. If we're gonna hand them out.
I'd probably give it to.
I will give it to Pettersson, because even though he wasn't the best player in the game, like, I think there were clearly better players than him in that game. I am manifesting good vibes here, and I'm gonna say this was the start of something better. I'm giving and I think also sometimes when we do things like the Infinity Gauntlet, sometimes through no fault of our own, we don't always go for the star players because we're like, they're the stars. They're always going to be here. So, like, you give it to, like, more of the unsung guys. So, yeah, let's give it to Pettersson. I'm going to give it to Pettersson today.
That's fair. I think I would probably have to give it to JT Miller.
That's the right call for sure.
Like, obviously the Lotto line, like, sucks. And, like, it's not great. And, like,
out
he's
of context,
obviously a big part of that.
Really dark. That sounds really harsh.
Yeah, it's just, but I mean, you can't fault he had 3 points that game or whatever it was, 2 goals and assists or something. Like, you gotta love that. And he's like above a point per game for the Canucks, even though, like, with all of his struggles, like, he's still like playing out of his mind, like, or producing out of his mind, all things considered. So you gotta love that. Runner up would be, of course, Podkolzin for having probably his best game of the season, and then runner up for Connor Garland for providing one of the funniest meme images we've seen in at least 3 days, where it was Myers next to him at the bottom of the circle looking like a complete mammoth, and then Connor Garland on the other side looking like like a Mighty Might player. Like, anyway,
literally,
very funny stuff.
Yeah, it's literally our lovely producer Jacob was talking today. Was talking about the commercial from like a bunch of years ago for McDonald's with like the mini sticks, where it was there was JC Petit, the goalie. I love that. My mom in particular loved that commercial because she always was like, "Oh my god, this is you." Because I was like just starting out as a goalie when that came out. I was so small at the time. She was like, "Oh my god," she loved that, the JC Petit. I still say "nice try, no Golov" all the time. And then there's Sergei Puckasin was the other one. Like, they're these tiny little guys, and then the puck gets huge all of a sudden. Like, when they score, it's so funny. It's very good. And that's Connor Garland.
Yeah. If you see my tweets or whatever at Cody Sievertson on Twitter, check some of the replies, because I think a few people posted the actual video from same as Jacob as well. I think what was his name, Dime Store Greaser or something like that on Twitter, sent it to me as well. It's really funny if you just
it's so good. I love those. I have some of those sticks. Those are good. Those were good.
Yeah. Anyways, NHL news. I was not here to talk about the Eichel trade, but I'm just going to offer some quick thoughts.
Yes, please.
The Tkachuk offer by Calgary never made any sense, and because I don't know why we would be hearing reports that was the package. Like, they would have accepted it immediately if that's really what they were getting in return.
Yeah, the insanely, like, that's literally, like, if they had done that, Calgary would have decimated the whole point. Like, they'd have killed the whole point of why you pick up Eichel, right?
Yeah.
It would have been.
It would have made no sense. It would have made no sense because at the time, like, dude, they're like 9-1-1. Markstrom's got more shutouts with Calgary than he has or ever got when he was a Vancouver Canuck. Like, he's just playing out of his mind. So it made no sense. Like, even when like the rumor came out that was the package, that they were just gonna like blow up their locker room that's finally put it together to start a season, because they've never started a season this good before. They're playing Sutter hockey where they play a full 50 minutes and they actually like kick ass most of the time. They're scoring they have like 45 goals or something. Like they're just like firing on all cylinders early, which is rare from that team.
Yeah, they crushed the Rangers the other day. It was like 6-0.
Yeah.
It was actually, I watched a lot of that game. It was very fun. In particular, the like in terms of like the way that the fans were booing Adam Fox literally every single time he touched the puck because he didn't because he didn't sign in Calgary and he went to the Rangers. And it was that was a fun, that was actually an entertaining game to watch. I am very, very skeptical on Calgary's ability to do that all the time. I am very much of the thought process of like, I don't think they're as good as this. I think they're definitely like a potential playoff team for sure. But like, I don't think they're as good as this. I think they're very much punching above their weight a little bit right now, as are a lot of teams in the Pacific.
Indeed. But that's what you're supposed to do in the start of the season, right? Like, is you punch above your weight and you try and build a cushion so that
it builds enough.
Yeah, that maybe like you regress to a more like what your actual playing ability is, but it's still enough that you can actually get to the playoffs.
Again, yeah, which brings us kind of to the Knights, because like here's the thing, right? Like, so they trade the trade package is among other things, it's Peyton Krebs, who wasn't going to play this on the Knights this year, and then or I don't think he was anyway, or maybe he played like slightly. He played like a few games, I think, for them, but he's like a highly touted pick. And then Alex Tuck, who's injured, who wasn't in the lineup, so they're not technically losing anything in terms of like the current team.
Yeah, it's a perfect punt trade from Vegas, where they're like, maybe all our guys come back and we make a late run for playoffs, and Eichel comes back and we figure out the cap then. Worst case scenario, they have a stellar team to start next year, and they actually really go for it with a bona fide number one elite franchise center.
Yeah, this is the first time they've actually had an elite number one center in the roster, which seems nuts to say considering how stacked that team has been for the last 5 years. Jesus.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're clearly like, this is they look like the Knights. God, I hate the Knights. I hate them so much. Like that they're able to still do this and pull this bananas crap is crazy.
You gotta respect the all.
I respect the hustle. Like I respect the hustle. They're doing some wild things. Like particularly the fact of like, I do not know how they're gonna fit everybody under the salary cap when they're all healthy again. Like, because
I don't know either. They're like way over.
Stone's not there. Yeah, they're way over if they're all healthy. Like the only reason I think they're able to get this deal done at all is because of how many players are on IR. Because Mark Stone's not there, Max Pacioretty's not there, Zach Whitecloud is not there, who I think is still technically on his rookie contract, but still. And obviously Alex Tuck kind of cut some of that out of there because of they dealt him.
But not 10 million's worth.
No, God, no. And I'm just looking at the team like, oh God, what are you it's another case of where they're probably going to have to make just an insanely bad trade like they did with the Canucks with Nate Schmidt a couple years ago, because to get Alex Pietrangelo signed. But again, this is the point of what good proactive GMs do, where it's like, it's one of those cases where if the opportunity comes up to buy a Jack Eichel, you get it done, you make it happen first, and then you figure out the other part. Like because guaranteed, no matter who you're going to lose to trade to kind of move the money around, you're going to be still a better team with Jack Eichel than you were before. Like in theory.
For sure.
Yeah, and it's good that they got it done because God, like I think
I didn't want to keep doing Jack Eichel updates on this podcast.
I didn't want to do Jack
Buffalo.
Yeah, I didn't want to do Jack Eichel updates. I don't think either of us wanted to. I think both of us just wanted to see him get his surgery because, frankly, in my opinion, that was the most important part. Was the fact that he actually was able to get his surgery. Because God, like the fact that he's been sitting, he's needed a reminder for everybody since May not even because he was injured for most of the year. So March, or I think something insane.
Yeah.
And it took until now, November,
for
him to finally be able to get it done.
Yeah.
And too long, way too fucking long. Like,
for sure.
And it's good that he's getting it done. And again, another case of, you hope if you're Vancouver, not to like make this into a Canucks thing, yeah, the Knights are going to be really, really good when he's back and healthy, and that team is more or less healthy again. You better hope you've built up some space now, because you're not going to get it when he comes back.
Yeah. After that, it's for speaking. Do we even want to talk about Jonathan Dahlen? Do we want to make? You want like I'm looking at all these NHL notes. It's just misery. So it's like let's quickly touch on it,
isn't it? Other than the McDavid goal, like holy cow! Did you see the McDavid goal? Like it was
disgusting.
It was absolute like. It was filthy. I love the face he made where he's like, you literally, like he said afterwards, he's like, oh, it's what I'm paid to do, blah, blah, blah. Like,
I do not listen to any interview of his because he is the most boring interview on the fucking face of the earth. I don't ever want to hear him talk about his own game because he can't.
You would if you want to ask Connor McDavid questions, you ask him about the other players. You don't ask him about himself. Like that's
I don't even want to hear that because he's so boring. He's so just like, what they did was really great for the team, and we just keep putting it together. Like it's such canned answer shit that I just I do not find him interesting whatsoever. I hate that someone as talented as he is so boring.
It's very it's real tough. Like for every now and then you get an Alex Ovechkin who's like super fun and personable, and like you actually want to and you want to see him succeed because of how fun he seems as a person. McDavid is one of those guys where it's like, oh my god, literally like the talent level is incredible. Like it's honestly hard to fathom how good he is sometimes, especially when he makes that plays like that.
That goal itself, was kind of like emblematic of just how clearly a tier above everyone else he is in this league.
Straight up,
no one else is 4 players or whatever it was to score a goal. Like disgusting,
absolutely disgusting. And yet, and then he's like, and then after he's like, I sometimes I drink water out of a plastic bottle instead of a glass. Like that's the kind of like energy he gives off.
He radiates, yeah.
He radiates that kind of energy, or like, oh, sometimes I eat pizza with a fork when I'm feeling really crazy. Although that being said, there was I don't know if you saw this, but there was actually I believe it was Leon Draisaitl posted Instagram photos on Instagram of him, McDavid, Ryan Nugent Hopkins, and their girlfriends for Halloween. They all went as the Friends characters, and they did a whole photo shoot as the Friends.
That's so boring too, though.
That is more interesting than I would expect out of him. That is much more interesting than I would expect out of him.
It's not, because I guarantee
I was expecting Ted Lasso.
He probably had nothing to do with the costumes. Their girlfriends obviously did. Like,
who cares? He's still dressed up as Chandler, which is better than I was anticipating out of him. I literally just expected him to show up in a tracksuit and pants and a fake mustache and be like, "Hi, I'm Ted Lasso."
Could you imagine that guy telling a Chandler Bing joke though? Like, it'd be the most pathetic thing ever. Could I be any more of the best player in the NHL right now? Hey, hon, pass me the water. I've had a sip of alcohol.
Pass me the Dasani. Like he doesn't drink Fiji because it's too exotic. That's just the vibe he gives off. But I will give Connor McDavid. Like, I know he has all the money he wants, but I would give Connor McDavid $20 out of my own pocket to, like, I don't know, just say something funny, like try and do a joke like Oliver Ekman-Larsson is in his interviews. Oliver Ekman-Larsson is quite funny in interviews. If you ever hear him, he's worth a listen.
I can't do it. You won't make me do it. Anyways, this McDavid talk is going to put me to sleep. So let's talk about something funny. Jonathan Dahlen has 5 goals, 7 points for the San Jose Sharks. San Jose Sharks are actually like doing pretty well. Like that is worth talking about. Teams has jumped out to a lead, which no one expected. It's because you know why? Your boy Martin Jones isn't stinking it up in net anymore.
Is that all? Is that the whole reason? Like, it's definitely part of it. It's definitely part of it. Like James Reimer and Aiden Hill. Reimer and Aiden Hill have done much better than I was anticipating in net for them, for sure. Honestly, I
Sure.
imagine they've probably done better than they were expecting out of those two in net too, right? The reason they're doing so well, like I look at the group, right? Like I'm looking, Jason Megna's brother, Jacob Megna is there, I believe. That's his brother, or at least a relation. Look, they're a team that like their top defensive pairing right now. Like they don't even have Erik Karlsson right now because he's injured. They have Brent Burns playing with Mario Ferraro, who's very good. But like not there yet. Like their second line is literally okay. Do you know who Nicholas Milosh and Artemi Kanazev
Knyazev?
I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I can't pronounce it either.
I'm not. We'll figure that out for next time. But like, yeah. I don't know who either. I didn't know who either of those guys are, and I covered the Barracuda for a while. Like,
yeah. No idea.
They have done way better than I think any of us anticipated. Like. And looking at their lineup, there's no reason for them to be necessarily doing as well as they are. They're just, again, it's guys doing a lot better than and punching above their weight.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Which, like, good for them.
Good for them.
They've been playing some terrible hockey in the past.
Year. We'll say like couple years. It's been like they were more competitive a couple years ago. Last year they really bottomed out. This year I think they were expected to be kind of in that spot again. Because I think they were taking the idea of a rebuild more seriously this time around.
Right.
But no, they're actually doing surprisingly okay. Like Jonah Gadjevich is playing fourth line minutes for them regularly. And then, there's the whole caveat that Jonathan Dahlen, former Vancouver Canuck, who they traded for
literally nothing,
a ham sandwich. And I feel bad saying that about Linus Karlsson because actually from what I've heard, he's doing okay in the SHL right now.
But everything I know is that Linus Karlsson wasn't even on the Canucks draft board. And if you know a draft board, there's like 200 something players on it. And the fact that he wasn't on a list of 200 players that were even on the watch list, like
it has a lot more
they
about
just
they value Dahlin rather than where
they just wanted to get rid of him, which
is
so stupid. Just no
mind-boggling
for a team that showed as much patience as they did for Jake Virtanen after many camp that among others, but Jake Virtanen especially, just how many opportunities and chances they gave that guy, even though he had no work ethic or drive or desire or interest in doing the right job correctly, showing up in shape, like any of that shit. They stuck by him till the bitter end and looked like idiots doing so. Meanwhile, Jonathan Dahlen said, "Why am I playing 12 minutes a night with Cam Darcy or Darren Archibald?" And word got back to the fucking GM, and they were like, "Yeah, he wants out. Let's get rid of him." And not even just got rid of him, but like stomped on his grave on the way out, and basically like
does that so far too often for my
they love to kick dirt over the guy on his way out. Like Troy Stetcher, they did the same thing where they were just like, he doesn't fit, he's too small, or the Sven Berchi thing where they're like, he plays with soft skill and we're a hard skill team now. We don't need that in our lineup. Like just unnecessarily like kicking dirt on these guys after they go. And
we talked about this during the Adam Gaudette trade, where it's like, if that's what they're saying it could just be Jim Benning being the like too honest at the wrong times kind of thing. But at the same time, you're wondering, well, if that's what he's saying in public, what is he saying to the GM he's negotiating these trades with behind closed doors? Because Lord
it's obviously not good.
It's probably not him sugarcoating, being like, this guy's way better. He's just not, he'll do better with you. Like, it's not that kind of thing. It's probably because then otherwise you'd have an angry GM on the phone every single time that you start kicking a guy while he's down after you trade him. And Dahlin, literally, like you said, they decided after not even a full season, half a season in Utica, that Jonathan Dahlen, I'm done. We're done here. This is it. We're done here. And again, like one of the few times I can literally say that I was actually there to see it, like what the ramifications were by being there for Dahlen's first game. And God, like it was not a kid with a like an issue, like a personality issue, or a work ethic, or like a work ethic problem. He was he was exhausted. Like, it was a guy of like, he's relief that he had been kind of given a better opportunity, that he was getting moved somewhere else and to a organization that would look after him better. Because again, like, people are like, oh, he just wanted to be gifted a spot. Like, he didn't have that problem with the Sharks. Like, that's never come up. That one never was a problem.
The funniest thing about that entire interaction was, you know, because obviously everyone was like, oh, did he demand a trade? And Jim Benning.
Yeah, we asked him.
Jim Benning and his agent were like dead set, like, oh, yeah, he wanted out, which contradicts Jonathan Dahlen's own statements and Trent Cull's, which was always the funniest thing to me, is that Trent Cull was like, yeah, he didn't want out. Like, obviously there was some communication problems and we didn't see eye to eye, but like, as far as I know, he was willing to put in the work. Like, he contradicted his own GM,
I forgot
which
about
was
that.
So funny.
And Dahlin's agent also, I think, later said, like, yeah, like he said,
was the one that I'm assuming what happened was Jonathan Dahlin's agent like heard the complaint. He was probably checking in, like, hey, how's the AHL going? And he was like, oh, I keep playing with like these guys. Did he
say he wanted out? Because I remember him. I might be wrong. I might be misremembering this, and you're probably might be remembering this better than I did.
I think the agent said, like, my understanding or memory is that the agent and Jim Benning were like, yeah, he wanted out, but the agent said Dahlin wanted out after Dahlin had gone to, I think, you and the media in San Jose, being like,
me and Shen.
Yeah, being like, oh, I didn't ask for a trade. I just said, like, I had questions and there were communication issues, which
it was very much a like if I remember I'm sure I'm probably have the audio around here somewhere. But like, I'm sure if I remember correctly what he said, it was like, because Shen was the one who specifically pressed the question, did you ask for a trade? He said, and Jonathan said, not to my knowledge. So like, if any sort of trade happened, it was not him going to his agent and saying, I want to trade, get me out of here.
No, and it was most likely like a communication thing with his agent where, like I said, he complained, or he didn't complain. He might have been like, yeah,
he might have not said anything. Like,
I want more minutes from my coach, but he keeps playing me with these guys who just have no career whatsoever. They're just AHL bums. And the agent heard that and was like, well, that's fucking ridiculous. Like, you should be a star. Let me speak to the GM. And then GM and agent were like, well, if your guy has a problem with my coach, I don't want him in my team.
Like, it might have been one of those reactionary things where it's like, oh, you're complaining? Fine, we'll trade you right now, kind of thing.
Yes, exactly.
Like, it could have been. And which is where I think the whole thing of like, oh, from Jim Benning's side of things, maybe it was a trade request, but like, that's still probably massaging the truth a lot.
And even then, it completely ignores the idea that if you hear that one of your prospects is having a hard time in the AHL and doesn't understand why things aren't going his way,
that's your fault, not his.
You don't sell right away.
God, no.
You figure out what can I do as a GM, as a manager, to make this person want to stay and play for me more, because we still believe in him as a player. Instead, they sold right away, and now he's one of San Jose's better producers, and he's playing matchup minutes with fucking Couture and Meyer, man.
He's line one with another former Canuck, Nick Bonino. He is on. There are a weirdly large amount of Canucks suddenly on that Sharks team. Like, it all culminates in the fact that now you're in a situation where Jonathan Dahlen right now has the same number of goals as Bo Horvat and JT Miller, and would right now under the points table would be tied for first in goals. And I believe pretty damn close to first in points, period. Like, he'd be pretty darn close. He wouldn't be, I don't think, number one. I believe Connor Garland has some ridiculous, like, 8 assists or something. Like, it's an insane number. But he has 7 points right now. That's not nothing. That's a lot, especially when 5 goals.
For a guy who's making, like, there was so much, like, discussion about, like, oh, some some kid from the Allsvenskan is not going to just be an NHL first line player. Because I remember when San Jose signed him to his current deal, I tweeted out being like, watch Dahlin be a first line forward for the Sharks because they have nothing else in their system this year.
You said it on this show.
And everyone replied to me on Twitter being like, you're a fucking idiot. Going from Allsvenskan to the NHL, he'd be lucky to play any minutes at all. And it's like, I understand the argument that San Jose doesn't have depth.
On a great team. It's another case of on like a Tampa Bay Lightning. No, of course not.
On a great team, he'd probably be pushed down the lineup or even out of it. But that's not the case in San Jose. And not a lot of players jump from the Allsvenskan after like pretty okay production in the AHL and produce at a 0.7 points per game pace and the NHL. It just doesn't happen. And that's why you don't sell on fucking kids this early, because of what you've heard through the grapevine. It's such a comical blunder from this regime. It was a comical blunder then that I am amazed didn't get as much traction as it did. I think everyone was so checked out with the Canucks at that point that they didn't care. And also I think the Tanner Pearson trade for Erica Branson, which was actually a steal in hindsight. Like that was a pretty damn good trade in hindsight. Was like I think that masked a lot of it because that was pretty quick. That all came out pretty quick. But yeah, like maybe it's just because I've met it's one of the few media people I've met during my players I've met during my brief media run here, at least in terms of access and being accredited and whatnot. Yeah.
But God, to me, and it's weird that this is where I'm hanging my hat, but Dahlin is the one that got away for me out of all of them. Out of all of the players, even Jared McCann, I don't think I expected I didn't expect Jared McCann to be as good as he is now. I saw with him, even that trade was bad regardless.
Yeah. It was a terrible trade.
It was a terrible trade.
For good Branson, that's a terrible idea.
But even McCann's ceiling, I was looking at, I was kind of I don't know. I was I didn't necessarily see him I didn't necessarily expect him to be as good as he ended up becoming.
Sure.
Whereas with Dahlin, I was very much of a case of for what they trade, they traded Alex Burrows, one of the best,
that was a steal.
One of the, an aging Alex Burrows, you literally got everything they could out of Alex Burrows and traded him for great value. And Jonathan Dahlen, I remember looking at him being this is a kid. This is a guy who could absolutely 110% be part of your team long term. And I remember
he also had the connection to Elias Pettersson from their days in the Allsvenskan. They had chemistry in preseason too. There was that one preseason where they both had 7 points each in 4 games.
It was nuts. They looked so good. So good.
They just needed to be patient, and unfortunately it resulted in the situation right now, which is very funny for us fatalists and the guys that just are laughing because of Canucks luck and all that. But
I want him to do well. I want Dahlin to do really well, and that's not as necessarily as to spite the Canucks at all. That's not.
It's for me. It is.
It's very. I know for you it is. Yeah. For me, it's a case of I think the kid is really something. I think he's a good. I think again, the thing that didn't come off in those quotes because they were just quotes off of my notes app. And it was that I really believed I really truly believe he's a good kid, and he's got he has the work ethic, he has the skill. He's a guy you want to root for to be successful, and I want to see him do well, even if that isn't with the Canucks. I want to see him do well, and I'm hoping that, and it seems like that's going to happen with him for the Sharks, so that's great. I'm happy for him that he's doing so well.
Yeah, for sure. Last thing, I guess we got one question from Twitter.
That's right.
From Capspace Wins Cup, Andy. How many players on Abbotsford will see NHL games this season? And honestly, this is a tough question to answer because you can answer it from the view of injuries, because injuries obviously impacts how many call-ups you can get. There's cap situations, or there's cap implications for calling some players up. So
there's the whole, if they're not a playoff team by the time the trade deadline comes around, who's gone, who have they moved to potentially give time to for now?
Exactly. Yeah. So realistically, maybe 7 guys get called up. And I'm not talking like the kids, but just in general players. Like you might see Will Lockwood. You might see, like, say if they are out of playoffs, maybe you do see a Danila Klimovic just for shits and gigs, right? Like you never know. Sheldon Dries, Sheldon Rempal, they've been playing really well together. Phil Di Giuseppe, like these are all like actual credible depth options for the team. But like who knows?
Yeah.
It's all dependent on a bunch of weird factors that you cannot account for at this time.
Yeah. You know what? Like, let's try and just kind of like narrow it down for a second here. Like in a sense of like, okay, let's look at like kind of like the immediate future of the team right now and where they're at right now. Like, for example, the penalty kill, right? Like we've been talking about how the penalty kill is problems. And, you know, Justin Bailey was one of the guys that technically got called up and has done okay in the spot that they've done. If you were looking to bring somebody up from there right now, based on what you're seeing in Abbotsford, like to try to fill that kind of a role, who would it be? Who's your first guy?
From defense, I think the only guy you can bring up is Jack Rathbone. Like I don't think there's anything there with Bowie or anyone. No. Like I really can't understate how weak that defensive and underwhelming that D-core is. Like it's just not good.
Dear. What about the forwards? Is it just
forwards?
It's
probably Phil Di Giuseppe, but honestly, I haven't seen much of anything from him at the AHL level this season.
Interesting.
He's only
he looked really good in the preseason. It's so
he
weird.
did, and that's why you always say like don't ever put too much weight into preseason because preseason is preseason. He's only got 4 points in 9 games. Some games he'll look like he's really trying to make shit happen, and then 99% of his shifts he just looks like he's just coasting. Like he just doesn't care, which I don't know. Maybe he's got a nagging injury or something, but
I think in theory, the guys are technically the guys who are called up are technically already here because Tyler Mott's, for example, Tyler Mott's not here, right? That's probably more or less why Justin Dahlen is technically still kind of here. Or Justin Bailey or what have you. Like there are guys who are technically should probably be in Abbotsford right now that are here because there's injuries. Not a lot of them, but like enough. Like Alex Chason is probably technically going to Abbotsford. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in Abbotsford pretty soon here because again, clearly it's not a fit here with what they want from him. It's not a good fit.
Yeah. What he offers is way too specific for what this team is willing to play.
Way too specific. It is 1,000% too specific. And especially because there are guys who are outplaying him that could potentially do that and more, like Podkolzin being the big one. I am just I would say that I think I haven't seen enough of Abbotsford to know what they're looking at there. I imagine if there are call-ups to be had, it's probably in the forward group. Assuming let's say there's like a very nominal, like a very like minor number of injuries. We'll say at most they've got maybe 3 guys injured at most. I would say, probably you're looking at a situation where it's maybe like there's maybe like a core 5 or 6 guys who are going to get called up. It's probably it's Dowling, it's Patan, it's Di Giuseppe, I already said Dowling. Who am I thinking? Bailey, Dries, Rathbone, and that's it. And then because again,
maybe Patan again. But like
maybe Patan again. Like those are your 6. Like no one else from that group. Again, like you said, maybe Klimovic comes up and that's your 7.
Yeah, just to see what he can do at the end of a dead season. This isn't like last season where there was like, or like the seasons past where it's like, oh, Jonah Gadjevich is doing really well. Let's give him a call up. Or Jalen Chatfield might be worth looking at for a bit here, just because he's doing okay. At least not yet. Like there's still plenty of time at the AHL level for some guy to suddenly step up and do really, really well. But right now, that's not there yet. You're not there yet. Yeah, agreed. Anyways, folks, that has been a hefty episode of the CreaseCast. We keep it hefty because, I'm not going to be back until next week. And so I try to give you my girth, as much as of me as possible.
Oh God!
Just throwing my girth all over you.
Oh, cool!
Into your ears.
Oh, cool! Would you look at that? The Canadian, the CRTC is calling me right now to fine us.
Your girth per 60 is way too much.
Oh,
anyways, folks, I am Cody Sievertson. You can catch my content at Cody Sievertson on Twitter or my website, ahlnucksharvest.com. Lachlan, where can they find your work, sir?
You can find me at canucksarmy.com, and at least my writing work, and you can find the rest of me on Twitter,
his
Instagram.
Girth.
Oh God. At Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Lach and the Crease. You should also make sure to check out our CreaseCast Patreon. We dropped it off the post over the weekend. Well, myself and producer intern Jacob did, talking about a bunch of random stuff over there. For $5 a month, you get those bonus shows. And we're hoping to get, hopefully we've got something in cooking that I'm hoping we might be able to get Cody on for, at least just for like 5 minutes. But on those off the post episodes. So you should definitely go check those out. We've also, and there's also a $1 tier if you just want to support like little stuff that we do around the show. You can check out our merch at on Teespring. And make sure you subscribe on all your podcast platforms and everything, including our YouTube channel. We do full YouTube episodes, and go hit that subscribe button. I'm hoping to get us to 100 subscribers on that YouTube channel by the end of the season. So let's go for that.
Let's go for gold, baby. Thanks again, folks. We'll catch you on the next episode. I won't be there, but episode 152 will be coming to you later this week with Lachlan and most likely Jacob. Thanks, folks. We'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.